everybody, to the Ogden Way podcast. I'm Ogden City Mayor Ben Nadolski, and this is where we talk about the stories of Ogden by telling the stories of Ogden's people. And today we've got my buddy Michael Smauldon here from the American Red Cross. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no. You were one of the first early people that reached out to me, actually, when I took office. When I start, like, everybody and their mom wants to talk to me, but from the nonprofit side, you reached out and wanted to meet, and you gave me a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah.
Because you're a thoughtful guy like that. But early on, you were really insistent on meeting and connecting, and we've been connected ever since.
Yep.
I appreciate that about you.
Well, I've never been in elected office, so I can't understand like how it feels when you get the job and then you have everyone kind of just rush wanting your attention. So, I just thought like, hey, I'll let you know who I am, and then I'll reach out a little bit later to give you some breathing room. And so I knew you'd probably appreciate that.
No, that was really thoughtful of you, actually. Everybody was pounding my door down, and you were like, I got you. Just give you a minute.
Yeah.
So appreciate the minute. But since then, we've had a lot more than a minute to just sit and talk. And the thing that jumped out at me, you were totally an Ogden boy.
Yep.
Right? You grew up an Ogden kid through and through.
Yep.
I'm not an Ogden kid. I'm a Phoenix boy that came to Ogden, right?
Yeah, but you're an Ogden guy now.
I'm totally an Ogden now, right? But you said you grew up using the Marshall White Center.
Yep.
Right? And how do you feel about seeing the new Marshall White Center open?
I was there at the opening, and I honestly was holding back tears. I grew up in, here in Ogden, 29th Childs. Two blocks away from Marshall White. We walk there every day. And it was probably what honestly saved my life. I had a, single parent mom of 4 boys who was, trying to make things happen, and being able to go to the Marshall White and play with other kids my age, play basketball, and the rec center and all that kind of stuff, and swim and be a part of the programs that were there, really, really helped me, give me that stable base that I really needed to stay out of trouble, and to, make a impact on me that is in essence has lasted my whole life.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm glad the Marshall White Center was there for you then, and I'm glad the Marshall White Center is there now.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of in a way for you as a grown man now, right?
Yeah. When I walked up and I saw the mural, my heart just started just beating fast, and I was so excited about this amazing possibility for the youth and the kids and the community here in Ogden City. I miss the old building. That's just because I grew up with it.
It's hard not to, right?
But I am impressed and glad on what this building and the symbol of what Marshall White, for not just me as a black man, but for the community as a whole in Ogden, what that means. And so it's a beacon of light here in downtown Ogden for kids who don't have much. There's a place for you to go.
Right.
There's a place for you to go play ball and go swimming and hang out and do activities. And I think that is so important, especially for our city, to be able to have something like that.
One of the things with the timing, and you heard me mention it there that day, we announced at the event our new police badge, and we're really leaning into our legacy as a city, our history together and our people. And the history and the legacy of Marshall White's really important to this community. It's important to your life, and the way it's important to you is why it's so important to so many. And it's the volume and collective of the stories and the impacts that makes this matter so much for Ogden.
Yeah.
Right. But if you think about it from our police department standpoint, it's really important in their life and in their work too.
Yep.
And there used to be a day where our police officers interacted a lot more with our kids. And there just came a time where with litigious society or with budgets or with whatever, I think our nation has kind of drifted, right?
Yep.
So it's not just an Ogden thing. And I'm really proud of my police chief, Jake Subi, who, when I interviewed him, I asked him what he wanted his legacy to be, and he really talked about standing on the shoulders of those that came before, leaning in our history, particularly around engaging with youth. And we saw, and it's been under construction for a long time, and in that time, we've been planning for this way to bring our officers and our kids back together again.
I'd have to say, like, when I was younger, I was on a basketball league, and it was ran by Ogden City Police.
Yeah.
And we were, it was awesome. It was fun. It was, they took the time, and we got to see police in a different way. There was, of course, there's some bad eggs in every group, and I ran into a couple of those when I was younger, but that never made me view Ogden Police differently growing up, because I would go into practice and there'd be some police officers there, and they were my coaches, and they would teach me the fundamentals, and we would play ball, and it was amazing. We had fun, and they'd bring me treats afterwards, and the team treats, and take us to out to eat afterwards, and that really was impactful. So like getting back to that whole community policing, when you made that announcement, I was cheering super loud, because to see Ogden City go back to that, and a chief that really believes that, that's where differences are going to be made.
Yeah.
Where people are going to view police differently, and they're going to just be better in the community instead of just I cover this area and that's all I do.
Right.
And I see police officers all the time by my my office on 29th and Harrison. They come in our parking lot all the time, and I always I go out and bring my little snack box, and I've went out there a couple of times and said, hey, can I get you some snacks or some waters? And they're like, oh, thanks, and but it's good to have them around, and but this next step is really going to help people really feel not scared of police, but that realize that police are part of the community.
Right.
And that's a really good thing.
Yeah. Not only not be scared, but to recognize them as people.
Yep.
That's one of the best parts of this job so far, is getting the chance to know them personally, but also see them in action. And it's not just the kind of action that you think about. It's not the TV show stuff that you see.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You see the real people kind of behind the badge, and you recognize them for the inherent quality that they are as human beings. They're here because they love the city and they love the people. And when they go out and they, if they're enforcing crime, they really feel like they're standing up for people who are victims. Yeah. Right. And that's important. And that's standing up for people's rights too, not just doing it with standing up for rights while you're, arresting somebody. They have rights, but you're also protecting the rights of the people that are victimized. Yeah. And we need people like that in our world and in our lives, including when we're kids. Yep. Right? And those kids need to know that there's people out there for them, looking out for them, and they need to know them and trust them. And I think being in that environment can really do that more for us. Yeah. Right? I think that we have the best school resource officers ever. And that's not just me saying it. Superintendent Rasmussen said it on this show, in fact, that working with the Ogden Police Department on school resource officer preparation and that program is second to none.
Hey, I'm a Bill Loman Scott.
Go Scots.
Go Scots. And right. We had an amazing resource officer there when I was there, and he was part of the school. He wasn't just the police officer that was there to protect us and make sure we were good. He'd walk the hall. Everyone was giving him high fives, and awesome. And he was at games, and he was just involved. And that is, that's an amazing thing to have a resource officer who could probably just hang out in his office all day and kind of just stay away from all the kids. But no, he was really active and really, brought fun to the school in his position. And so, Ogden has some great resource officers.
Absolutely.
And,
we
should be really proud of that.
I am super proud, as you can tell. And we're going to make this whole show about OPD, but we'll move on here shortly. But we are starting to a point to where we're selecting for the people that want to engage with the youth, that have the drive and the interest and willingness. And as they do that, it's really important they connect with the kids in the hallway so that those kids can trust them and come to them with things that they need help with. It happens all day, every day, right?
Yep.
And they do that throughout the school year. And then we get to the summer and they kind of sever that connection. The kids go out and do whatever they want out wherever. And they go and do other assignments and then they come back to the school. So instead of doing that, we're keeping those bridges built through the summer.
Nice.
By offering the RAD program for kids that is actually coached and taught by our officers at the Marshall White Center.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
Right? And that program teaches kids, self-confidence, how to handle bullying, online, hygiene online with social media and things like that, and how to make sure that the people that you're around are safe, etc. And that's the kind of thing that they're well equipped and now certified because they went and took training and are certified. And it aligns with what we're selecting for them,
Yeah.
And so we're not just putting people in a spot that's open. We're putting people where we think that they're best equipped to succeed and to thrive. And I think that's going to and is already kind of leading to a lot of results for kids too, right?
That's great news.
Yeah.
Super excited about that. And for your officers. I think that's awesome. And if I had give some advice to them, I would say, like, this is going to radically change your life. You're going to get to know these kids on a level that you have never got to know them. You're going to see their successes and their failures.
Mm-hmm.
And you are going to be able to have an impact that can forever change the trajectory of a lot of these kids' life, that they are probably not heading in the right one, and you can alter that trajectory just by being a friendly face, being listening and interested in what they're doing. You'll earn their trust, and they'll be able to go to you. And that's what happened with me, growing up.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. We're having we're getting some feedback. There's some concern that our new rate structure is not accessible enough for enough kids. So we're actually revisiting a couple tweaks to make that even easier. We went from a daily fee to a monthly fee.
Oh.
So we don't want kids here a day or two. We want kids here every day.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to give them a longer term pass so that they have access all the time. So if you come and you do a discount once, you get a longer term pass and you come more.
Yeah.
Is what we're after. And so our daily fee is higher than what our monthly fee would be if you broke it down. It's a lot more comparable to the prior fees if you look at it monthly versus daily. But anyway, we've got some ideas on how we can remove some barriers so they can get deeper discounts. And we're talking to some corporations right now, local companies that are, this is really exciting, that want to give us some grants so that we can just give scholarships to kids to come in.
That's awesome.
And so I'm really proud of our staff for thinking outside the box. And when companies come and say, we really love that center, what can we do? They're like, our goal is to get more kids in here, and kids of all means. And the kids that have barriers financially, we don't want that to happen. So if you could help them, they're like, oh, how do we help? So exciting stuff coming.
That's the way to make it.
In that regard.
That's good community right there, man.
Right. And these ideas are coming out of input we're getting from people in the community post-opening. So we're all going through the growing pains of opening.
Yeah.
And we're finding things like a line in a form that's like, oh, that's going to be a problem. How do we fix that? Right?
Yeah. That's
so
amazing.
Anyway, more good stuff coming, but just reaching back to you being a kid at that time and fast forwarding to what you're doing now for American Red Cross. How does your time as a kid growing up in that neighborhood with a single mother, does that help you in the work you're doing now? Because with your pillowcase program and making sure that kids and families are prepared for emergencies?
Yeah, I have to say this. My mom, she really instilled in me the power of giving back. We didn't have a lot of money. We were, very poor at the time. She was working her butt off, but she would always make us go serve, Christmas dinner, Thanksgiving dinner at Marshall White. And we would, she'd always make us do that. And we're like, why are we doing this? Right? Like, why are we doing this? And she's like, it's always good to give back. Like, we've been blessed. Like, the Lord has blessed us a lot. Like, we have to, we should be giving back when we can. And we did that for so many years. And that, kind of just put that in me to just give back. And so as I've, moved up, through the Red Cross, a couple promotions up to being executive director, when I became executive director of Northern Utah and based here in Ogden, I was in tears. I was, my wife had to push me into that position. And I'll be honest with you, because like I was in disaster services. I love being in disaster and deploying and doing all that stuff. And, coming back, and I was like, I don't want to be an ED. That's like out in the public. That's me doing interviews in the news and doing all this stuff.
Talking to yucky to yuck.
And my wife told me, like, look, this is going to help you enhance what you're doing, and help you on some of the skills that you need to build on, so you could be a better, well-rounded individual. And so I was like, all right, I took it. And so
all right,
when I officially got it, I actually drove here to the office, and I remember walking into my office, and I just, started tearing up, because I was like, I grew up here.
You're back. Yeah.
I grew up here. And now I'm here to help enhance the community that not only poured into me, and my family, but now I get to reciprocate that back.
Right.
And so, it was, it was a just amazing moment, when I became the executive director. And yeah, now we're utilizing our programs, and I'm really working on community mobilization. And that's, really working in those areas that are low income, to make sure that we are pushing our services there. We're flooding those zones, with our staff and our volunteers, to be able to help people realize that, being resilient before a disaster is going to help you bounce back after a disaster. But we do understand, someone spending hard-earned money that they don't, they're trying to balance, rent, food, childcare, and all that stuff, and then having to go buy a 72-hour kit is a bit much. And so, we're working, trying to get our partners together to go, how do we work on those social determinants of health, to be able to help boost the community, so then they can start thinking about what disaster and disaster resiliency is. And so, we're not going to reinvent the wheel, right? It's reaching out to our partners and having those conversations, like the United Way and others, as they're already doing that work. I'm not going to go start a food pantry. I'm not going to go.
We have partners.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not going to do that kind of stuff. I don't need to restart that stuff. There's already enough people already doing it.
Right.
And so it's creating those partnerships, getting out there and having those conversations, shaking those hands, sitting down and making those agreements and those memorandum of understanding, and really utilizing our partners to, hey, we're working with the family. They really need help when it comes to food. How can we help them, so they could start, they can live and not starve, and more of that kind of stuff, which is, it's a big change for the American Red Cross. We were always like, well, if you need us for a disaster, just call us, right? But now we're looking at things more holistically, with our services, the Armed Forces team. They're doing casework with veterans, and really working with our partners to help those veterans who are homeless or in trouble, to really like find those partners and get them connected, so we can, help those who, sacrifice their life for our freedoms, to help keep them moving, and growing, in their life. And so we're just our whole team is looking at that. Even our whole blood services team and our training services team are really looking at that, things differently, of how can we help, how can we support, to be able to do that.
Every time I see you, not to get off topic, because I'm not, but everything you just said, there is no script for it. It is coming out of your soul.
Yeah.
And it gets back to the fact that you are so blessed to be coming back to Ogden and working in Ogden from where you were as a kid, to come full circle, to have a wife who pushes and challenges you to grow and to be your best, right?
Yep.
That you are surrounded by someone that cares deeply and loves you so much that she wants to see you stretch, right?
Yep.
And you were talking, you said, and and we used to always give back, and we would serve Christmas and Thanksgiving dinner. And you're like, at the Marshall White.
Yeah.
It's just so profound how significant the Marshall White was in your life, but how profound Ogden has been in raising you.
Yep.
Right? But let's not forget that you're now raising Ogden too. And I think we have a really great opportunity with the American Red Cross and with you in particular to really explore. You said, I'm not going to do a food pantry because we have a lot of people in the organizations already doing food pantries. Not that there isn't more need for more food in those pantries.
Yeah.
Right? Or in more food pantries. But those are the people that know how to do that.
Yep.
So let's lean on them for that. We don't need to create redundancy or even competition potentially, or conflict, even worse, right? We need to create alignment. And that's what the Ogden Way framework is set up to do. And that's what you and I were talking about when you came, and you're like, I'll give you a minute. And then we talked, and everything that you're talking about for disaster relief, but also preparation, 72-hour kits, smoke alarm, right? Carbon monoxide. Do you have an escape plan, right?
Yep.
And how do you help kids make sure that they're ready in the moment and not panicked, and right?
Yep.
Those are the kinds of things that we actually have been doing some of as a fire department. And that's a service that needs to happen for our people, but it doesn't have to happen by our fire department. It can happen through a partner.
Yeah.
And that's the perfect example of how I'm building the Ogden Way framework with collaboration as a core value, bringing partners to the table to help deliver services that are tangential or directly related to what we do, so that we don't have to put taxpayer dollars into our service while also having private donations and nonprofits, right, and NGOs.
Yep. Do the same thing.
We can do the same thing and be a lot more efficient because we're not a city of people that have enough wealth to be able to be funding both.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's really important for our people.
And I when we had that conversation, I remember, we were talking about, I wish people would look at the nonprofits that are already here, and then how can you work and enhance those nonprofits instead of starting a whole nother nonprofit. And I think there's ways to, as people are looking at, the numerous nonprofits that are here in Ogden City, is how do you effectively join a nonprofit, enhance that nonprofit, stick to the mission of that nonprofit. There might be some enhancements where they might change some of their programming, or add some programming,
right?
And still not mission drift or that kind of stuff. And I would encourage more people to really look at that and look at the nonprofits that are already here, and how can you give your time, your energy, your treasure to really enhance what they're already doing, and join a board, be a part of that board, and really enhance what that nonprofit and that mission is doing. And if we had more people do that instead of just starting a whole nother nonprofit just for one little niche, or even if it's not just a niche, it's I want to start a food pantry, so I'm going to do it. I don't necessarily agree with how that the food pantry here in Ogden is doing it. I don't agree with it, so I'm going to start a whole new one.
Well, then get involved and get it better.
Join the board.
Help make it better.
Get part of the board and change it for the better. Because, I have a board, and they are amazing individuals who sit on my board of directors. And I couldn't do what I do if I didn't have them.
Right.
But they push and challenge me all the time as the executive director. Mike, do you think about this? What about this? You're not really thinking about this. Mike, if you work on your PTO one more time, we're going to have a conversation. Work with your team, but take time off because we need you to stay at your best, right? So they're always pushing and getting me there. And others can do that. Citizens here in Ogden, they can do that. They can be a part of a board. They can enhance that nonprofit. They can make it the best it can be. And I challenge people here to look at the boards, look at the nonprofits here, and join. I know several boards, including myself, who need people. We need people on our board.
Okay.
On our boards to help us continue moving forward, to continue helping people, to bring ideas and the way we can do things better. And the only way we could do things better in our community is if the community joins in,
right,
and brings the attention to what's happening and saying, hey, Mike, did you realize this is happening, here in Ogden? And I, like, oh, I don't. Let's talk about it. Let's get everyone together and the board, and let's see what we can do to make a difference in that area. And if we're not, we're not going to mission drift, right? We're gonna,
Right.
if it's something that's not in our mission, let's go find a partner who's already doing it and have that conversation with them so they can do it. So I agree with everything you're doing, the Ogden Way, and to make sure that we are being more in sync. Not just as a government, but as a government and nonprofit and businesses and all that for-profit organizations that we're working together for the betterment of Ogden City.
Right. It's about finding and being in synchronicity, I guess, or alignment is what I'm always thinking about it. Because we can't afford to be at odds ever. Like, we're not wealthy enough as a community. Not that there's not wealth in our city, but there's wealth within our people. There's wealth within our spirit, for sure. And, you guys are in the right location with the work that the United Way is doing to set that table and bring that togetherness. Because when you get into that environment, there is no politics. It's just people. It's just service. And sitting on a board is one way, but also the programs you run are volunteer-led as well, right? Volunteer supported. And so if the fiduciary role and the governance role of being on the board of directors is not for you, there's other ways that you can contribute to volunteering, to going into the neighborhoods, connecting with families and kids. But I find that when I've been involved with nonprofits, and it applies to other experiences in life too, like, you've got really high quality human beings on your board. You have some like really top notch achievers, right, in this community. But when you surround yourself with those kinds of people, you become one and like that too, right? Like, if you're sitting at the table and you're the smartest person, sit at a different table, right? And so these are opportunities to level up too, by surrounding yourself with greatness and leveling up your own, right?
Agreed.
And others can do that based on your greatness too. That's how we build.
And I think too, like, like you said, if you don't have to necessarily be on the board, but you can still be a part of something. And, I have a team of 5 in my office. Majority of the time, it's only 3 of us in the office. The other 2 are out about, volunteer recruiting and, doing other stuff. And majority of our team are volunteers. I have 300 volunteers here in Northern Utah who are incredible human beings, who give time and sometimes their treasure to enhance what we do here in our community. And so a lot of the work that we wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for our volunteers. It just wouldn't be possible. And so walking into my office and seeing, 4 or 5 volunteers like sitting there and working with our staff and planning and doing things, and they're just running programs. That's the way to do it. And so, if you want to volunteer, we got plenty of work for you guys to do. If people want to volunteer, we can always use your passion and your heart and your amazing minds to come, push what we're doing and to help the community that we're serving.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what your volunteers are doing, because that really gets to the heart of what your program is. If you were to volunteer for the American Red Cross, going into these communities and meeting these families and neighbors, what does that work look like? What is the goal? Why are you doing it? What do they leave with after your volunteer leaves?
So, we have numerous different opportunities for volunteers. We have those volunteers who are, they work 40 hours a week.
Wow.
It's a normal job for them. But they do it volunteer. They've retired. They just want to do something to give back. And so they have the time.
I think that's called an unpaid employee.
But then we have those who, they have only an hour a month. And so, they'll come back and be like, hey, do you have a quick project I can do? And, this is what we're working on. And they'll work on that project, and they're like, hey, see you next month. Right. And so, but within the scope of Red Cross, right, I think most people understand that Red Cross is, we do disaster relief. We do blood donations. But they don't realize the other stuff that we do, right? And that's, we have our services to the Armed Forces team who are really working to enhance the life of our active duty members, their families, and veterans and their families. And we have an amazing team of volunteers and staff who are on Hill Air Force Base in the pharmacies. And, they're at the medical group doing volunteer work there and enhancing what the medical group is doing. But here working with veterans and working with, other veteran centers and being able to look at a veteran who calls our Hero Care Network and say, hey, don't have a place to live. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go, but I just need help. And our casework teams call them up, set up times with them, interview them, and then start working with our partners to help getting them something they need. They register them, help them with their VA benefits, getting them some housing, getting them some cash in their pocket if needed, food if they need, to really enhance that veteran's life.
Wow.
And a lot of people don't know that, Red Cross started with Clara Barton on the battlefield. That's where she started, was, the Civil War and helping both sides and trying to keep people alive. And the enhancement of 200 plus years from that.
Wow.
We do disaster relief and we do blood, but we still do what we started doing. And that was helping our veterans, helping our service members, and helping their families. And so we will never get away from that. We will continue doing that. And so we have amazing volunteers who are doing that kind of service work. And then with our blood services team, we have volunteers who are going to blood drives and being that blood donor ambassador. And so they're welcoming people in and saying, hey, welcome. Let's get you checked in. Do you need water? Do you need snacks? What do you need after your blood draw? Let's make this happen. And they're that friendly face that people need when they walk in, because some people are scared. I don't like needles. I work for the Red Cross.
but I like cookies and juice.
But, it's nice when I'm like, okay, I'm not going to look. Just hurry up and poke me and get my blood, right? And a blood donor ambassador walks up and holds my hand and goes, just look at me, Mike. I got you. And then next thing I know, I'm like, cool, I'm done. And I get my little snack and my little juice box, and we're good to, we're rocking and rolling, right?
Yeah.
But there's numerous volunteer positions that we have at the Red Cross, and opportunities for people to deploy, not just all over the United States, but like all over the world.
Wow.
In some cases, to be able to help people in a disaster. And our largest team here is our disaster services team. But we focus a lot on preparedness, which is a blessing here in northern Utah, where we don't have a lot of disasters, knock on wood. But we get the opportunity to go out and to help people understand what happens if a disaster, and are you ready for it? We talked about our pillowcase program and being able to go teach kindergarten through third grade. Hey, your feelings are valid. When something scary happens, those are valid feelings, but here are some tips that you can do to help you handle what those feelings are, and to be able to keep, talk to an adult about how you feel, and to be able to keep moving through during a crisis, right? Not just a disaster, but a crisis. And so those are important things that we're trying to teach from kids to teenagers on how to, we really, our hands-only CPR, and making sure that people have some sort of way to, when they see someone have a medical emergency, right, is to, call 911, check their pulse, give compressions until medical personnel arrive, and to be able to keep saving, people's lives, kind of go from there. Stop the bleed programs and other things like that, right? In case, something happens and someone is severely injured and they're bleeding, right? How do we help, to make sure that person
you guys
is
are
not
doing
going to
a lot of the training for how to respond to that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which really dovetails with our Pulse Point program too, to make sure that when those emergencies happen, we know that there's trained people around that can help with that.
So, we're really trying to just look at the community and be able to holistically make sure that people are prepared. But on top of that, we're not going to just come in and, we don't want to come in and just take over and go, this is the stuff that you need.
Right.
This is what you need to learn. No, we want to meet with the community where they're at and go, what do you want to learn and how can we help you? And then
Way more powerful.
and then find those in the community who could then teach their own community. And that is a big pivot for Red Cross, right? Where we used to go in and do all these massive trainings and do this stuff. No, now we want to do train the trainers. And we want to train community. And we want to get community helping community and people helping neighbors and getting to know their neighbors. And that's a huge thing that is when it comes to resiliency work, is getting people to understand and get to know their neighbors and their friends and others that are around them, because you won't respond or help somebody if you don't know them.
Dude, I don't know if people listening or viewing can see it or not, but I'm just telling you, I can feel it in the room. Like I can tell when you get really, I don't know, there's something I can see in you. You get animated about community and connecting with people. This is why every time I see you, I feel better. Did you see when we knocked on wood? We did the exact same knock at the exact same time.
Yeah.
I knew we were brothers. I knew it.
I just want people to be successful. I want people to be able to, when a disaster occurs, to be able to bounce back. I've traveled all over the United States, from the Paradise Fires in California to hurricanes in Florida and the Carolinas and Louisiana, and I see communities who don't bounce back. You don't realize that when a business fails, the community fails. We work to get businesses to do a what we call our ready rating survey, to determine if they are ready for a disaster. And trying to get businesses to understand that if you fail, especially if you're like a grocery store or anything that provides services like that, if you fail and don't return, the community doesn't return.
Wow. Yeah.
And I've seen it. I've been in Louisiana where in their wards, and a grocery store goes away and people have to get on a bus and travel 3 hours to a grocery store. And they're like, this is not worth it. I'm moving. And so then they move out of the city and they move out of that ward.
Or it gets replaced with the convenience store, and the convenience store sells junk food that costs more, and then the community health suffers, and then there's all of these different cycles, right?
And so getting the whole community to understand that everyone has to play their part, whether you're a business, another nonprofit, or a community member. There's something for you to do and to learn and to understand to be able to help our city be able to bounce back after a disaster.
Did you see the new research that was just announced this last week, I think, around the severity of the big one, the earthquake that's coming? I'm sure you're tracking on it.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the kinds of things that you're talking about, is when I should say, that happens, this community has to be prepared so that we bounce back, that we return.
Yep.
And I mean, those are the kinds of things that you think about when you're the mayor, that you're like, this could happen on my clock. And even if it's not on my watch, right? Am I preparing and working with partners, and is our disaster relief team preparing, right?
Yeah.
For the next mayor and the next, or whenever it happens, because it's going to happen.
Yep. And getting people to understand too that it's not just, the government is not going to come save you. The government's going to get essential services up and going. The government's going to get, go out and rescue people and save lives and to focus on that stuff. They're going to get road repair. They're going to get bridges back up and going. They're going to get the city up and going. You have to be prepared and take care of yourself.
But it's the people.
And us as, in our community, we're going to have to step up and we're going to have to help people. And Red Cross will be there, right? We will mobilize 10,000 volunteers from across the United States to come here and to help open shelters and to feed people and to do things like that, because this is the incredible organization and structure that we have. But if we can start it local, if we can build up this stuff local, I don't need 10,000 volunteers from out of state to come in when I have the community that can help itself and can step up and to recover and bounce.
You get me fired up again.
And to take care of our own. And so, that's the when we talk about community mobilization, it's mobilizing the community to be able to face disasters together have the training, be trained, get the training now. So then when it does happen, it's not, hey, I want to help. What do I need to do? No, you're already trained. Let's get you trained. Let's get you going. So then when it happens, you know exactly what to do.
The more you talk, the more I realize why you tell me you like what I'm up to on the Ogden Way. Like, you really are the Ogden Way through and through.
Yeah.
You talked about, we already had all the alignment talk, but you talked about government's not going to do it for you. You have to do it. And then we also have to help each other. Like, that's, if we want to make Ogden great, we have to invest in our people, make ourselves great, make each other great. It's all about our people.
Yeah.
Like, if our people are thriving, Ogden's thriving. If our people are struggling, Ogden's struggling. Yep. That's the fact. Everything follows our people, right? That's why everything's about our people.
Yeah.
It's not about politics or power. It's about people. And so if we could just snap our fingers and everybody would be totally engaged and empowered to own their own circumstances, that would make all the difference, right?
Yep.
But there's also people that aren't able to or won't. But I remember that we had a huge windstorm. I don't remember what year it is. I'm not great with time and calendars. Looking at Cindy, she can attest. But prior Mayor Mike Caldwell, I remember I was on the city council at the time. I remember calling him around like city response and stuff. And I said, well, sounds like we got a neighbor up, right? Because he was like, we've got public works, police, fire, power company. He was telling me all the things you just told me.
Yeah.
He was working on those. And I'm like, all right, sounds like we got a neighbor up in here, right? And then I saw him in the media and he said, it's time to neighbor up. He said it. And that was the theme that resonated for me.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about.
Yep.
When that thing comes, we got to be ready to take accountability for ourselves, and we got to be ready to neighbor up.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you're doing. That's what community resilience is, right?
Neighbors helping neighbors, community helping community. And, when we do that, we can bounce back so much stronger than if we don't.
Right.
So, I sadly, I don't live here in Ogden, right? But I live nearby. I live in Clearfield. And I have taken, my wife is not a extrovert. She is total introvert. If she didn't have to talk to anyone, she wouldn't. But I mean, we've taken time to really get to know our neighbors, on the sides of us, across the street, up and down the street, and really taking the time to get to know everyone. So when something does happen, I'm not trying to figure out who they are. Do they really want my help? No, it's me going over there and going, hey, can I help you? Like, what's going on? Like, hey, and they know us. If something's happening there. And that's what we want to build, that social cohesion, within our community, so that people don't feel like they have to avoid people or, do they really want my help? Well, I don't really know them, so they probably don't want anything, so I'm not going to help. And they're struggling. But, we need to get back to that social cohesion of community and getting, people knowing each other, neighbors helping neighbors, knowing neighbors, and being friends with each other. And no matter what your politics are and your religion or what you look like or anything like that, we can get together as a community and help build each other up for the better.
That's right. And Michael, thanks for spending more time with me again. I mean it. I feel better every time. I'm a better person when I'm with you.
Well, I appreciate it.
I really feel that way. And
I feel about you. That's like, every time I see you and you're giving some kind of speech or something, I always, I'm always yelling at you.
That was funny.
Something.
That was funny. That one, you were over. Let's see. You were on my right.
Yep.
And you're like, yeah, but or something.
I was like, preach.
Amen. Yeah. I remember that. That gave me another boost, actually. I'm like, yeah. But what you just said is a great way to end, because times are hard right now. If you turn on your TV or look at the news, it's just hard. It's messy out there. And those things are kind of emanating from Washington, D.C., and it's affecting people, whether it's directly affecting you or just affecting your psyche. For me, it's affecting our entire community and the morale and You know what I mean?
Yep.
Just the energy of our city is affected by these things. And there's so much discontent and foment, right?
Yeah.
Disagreement. And it's our responsibility as leaders locally to push that stuff aside. This is not a partisan situation. This is a people situation. And it's really refreshing to be reminded, because I know it, because I know you and I know so many others that are doing the kind of work you do. But we have to continue to remind each other that this is what it's about.
Yep.
This is why we're here, right? We're not here to make a political stance, to score political points, or to make political headlines so that you can win points in your party or not. You know what I mean? We're here to make impact for people.
Yep.
And prepare and to make connections. And that's how a city thrives. That's how Ogden's going to thrive. That's the Ogden way.
Preach.
Michael, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I love your heart. I love your spirit. I'm so thankful I got to know you and that we have a connection. And I look forward to strengthening that, furthering it. And if there's anything I can ever do to help you do that with and for others, please let me know.
Well,
Okay.
like I said the first time you met, how can I help?
I know,
You
right?
Let me know too.
Okay. Well, I think that you're going to be able to help with the Marshall White. I know you're going to help with our fire department, but I had another idea that I want to talk to you about before you leave. Okay. Just came to me during our interview.
Sounds good.
So we end every episode with a call to action. So I'm just going to say, if you're looking for a way to give back, your call to action is to reach out to Michael, to the American Red Cross of Northern Utah. Plenty of volunteer opportunities. If you enjoy the fiduciary responsibility of governance for nonprofits, there's that. But all of the volunteer opportunities that you mentioned, being able to connect and to give back, at whether it's an hour or 40 per week, Michael has it. The American Red Cross has it. There's the need out there, and there is so much goodwill to be had, right?
Yes.
Okay. Until our next episode, thank you for joining us here on the Ogden Way podcast. Michael Smauldon, American Red Cross. Thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for being here today with us.
Thanks for having me.
Many blessings.